Stephen Conroy, Cory Bernardi and Bronwyn Bishop each and every week when we get the chance to have a conversation. One and all, hello. Stephen Conroy Way, of course, is going to be renamed somewhere upon the next return of the Victorian government. But let's talk about, and we'll get to ScoMo, you can all do your stuff on ScoMo in a second, this power grab that I talked about at the start of the show. Cory, you know the process. You know that there's always an inquiry afterwards, and just because you have an inquiry doesn't mean you get a solution. But the makeup of this inquiry is 5 members from the Labor Party, 4 members from the Liberal Party and 1 Green. So I hope they understand what's happening here, because if we change a system to be like what happens in Queensland or like Western Australia, the Greens, One Nation, the Liberal Party, everything that's not Labor is going to get blown away at every election by money.
Paul, they're going to spend 3 years, countless hundreds of thousands of dollars on this inquiry, and I'll tell you what will happen. They probably will recommend exactly what you said about additional senators for the territories, because that will enhance the Labor/Green left vote. They will put a cap on spending, because they know that the unions won't be subject to that, and third-party organisations, and they can do better in that space than the right side of politics can. We know that they'll probably have real-time donation disclosures, because they don't care if the unions are pumping the money in or they're doing it externally, but they know that a lot of Liberal voters will be, or Liberal supporters would be, gun-shy about being disclosed in that. This is a fait accompli, but I'm going to hand it to the Labor Party. They know what their agenda is politically, and we'll come to the rest of all the failings in that space later, but you know, they know what their agenda is politically. The Liberals get in there and, are mealy-mouthed about everything. They don't actually do anything. And then they wonder why they get beaten and played off a break at every single turn, Paul.
Stephen, this will happen because, as we talked about, remember when Donald Trump had the numbers to get Amy Coney Barrett on the Supreme Court. If you have the power, use the power, no matter at what timing or what it looks like. They're going to do this, but before, let me break it down into 2 parts. Do you think that we should double the number of senators in the Northern Territory and in the ACT? And then we'll get to the money bit.
Look, that's an interesting debate that's only come up recently. I hadn't spent a lot of time thinking about it until it sort of started to get kicked around. I think the Greens are desperate to try and get a senator in the ACT, desperate to try and get a senator in the Northern Territory. This is their best chance. I'm not sure there's a need to do it, but I'll be listening to the arguments on this one. And the Labor Party should be careful
listening to Don
about what it wishes for. Don's a very good friend.
It then has
and a very sensible person.
You'll be told what to think.
So then, okay, about the extras. I'll get back to money in a second, Stephen. I will get to it. I know we diverge on this.
As I said, they should be careful what they wish for.
Yeah, correct. But okay, but Bronwyn, about the extra senators for the NT and the ACT, because this is a permanent majority for the left and the far left in the Senate.
Indeed, and it's not warranted. But if you do it, there's another provision that says that the Senate has to be half the size of the House of Representatives, which of course means that you'd have to increase the size of the House of Representatives, which means that you can then allocate seats, and you can, depending on who's appointed the commissioner who's going to be allocating the seats.
Look at all this population growth in Marrickville. We need 2 seats.
So it really is. I've sat on that committee. And you have to be very forceful and powerful when you're fighting it, because we've fought fights like this before. What it really should be looking at is why it hasn't got the electoral roll linked up so that you get rid of multiple voting. It should be looking at ID for voting. It should be looking at the question of whether or not the system that we have of optional preferential list voting is a reasonable system or not. It's fairly new. There are a whole lot of issues like that that are technical.
I'll settle for first past the post.
I'll settle for optional preferential voting for the lower house. Yeah. I think it's a better system.
So, okay, Stephen, about the money, don't worry, there's other stuff we're going to get to, and I know you want to tee off about ScoMo and the bombshell scathing report. But about the money here, nobody can pretend that the unions are independent from the Labor Party. They literally, in the Constitution, the membership, they are totally immersed and enmeshed. You can't pretend they're independent entities. They are the Labor Party.
Well, the Cormac Foundation in Victoria, you've carefully avoided mentioning that Victoria introduced these rules. and they're being used for the first time in this coming Victorian election, and you ignore all of the foundations. So in Victoria we have the Cormac Foundation, which has approximately $80 million, which is part of the Liberal Party, and it is able to donate as much money as it wants to the Liberal Party. But this is an argument we've had before, Paul. I'm in favour and strongly in favour of public funding of elections. The Liberal Party have voted for it. They voted for it in Victoria. They've probably voted for it in those states because they understand that the costs of running campaigns are out of control. The costs of administering parties are getting more expensive, and membership fees and fundraising
But it also
is a
lost a
challenge,
duopoly.
particularly in today's climate.